Okay, hey guys, welcome to Beyond Sunday. We get to be in the same room today. We're doing a prayer practice later today. Get that out. And so we get to record this in the same room. So these aren't very often, but we enjoy this time. So Shay, how you doing?
Good.
All right. Hey, check out this video before we dive in. All right, so this week we are in this guided journey, trusting the leader. And in this one, where was our main text, or what was the big idea before we get to the main text?
Yeah, we were talking about God being a God of forgiving
Mhm.
and how he makes a way for redemption through forgiveness.
Yeah, and so really we could see that through the whole story of Scripture, the whole arc of it from Genesis all the way to Revelation, and how God is making a way for forgiveness to take place in different ways through covenants, and in the Gospels through Jesus, and then obviously Revelation and the coming again. But what was some of our, I don't know, was there a main text you had? Because we here at C3 were kind of all over the place, but
Yeah.
was there a main text?
We were all over as well. We used three main texts. So we've been tracking this through the Psalms, right? So Psalm 32, but we also used Luke 15 and 2 Corinthians 5, which I think you
Yes,
did
and we
also.
use as well. So
Yeah.
we started in Psalm 32 and that middle section there, verse 5. Then I acknowledged my sin to you and did not cover up my iniquity. I said, I will confess my transgressions to the Lord, and you forgave the guilt of my sin.
Yeah.
It's really the crux of that psalm, and sort of the invitation of what God is inviting the psalmist to, what inviting us to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and we kind of ended with that. We started with Luke 15 and the prodigal story. Our service was a little different because it was a family service for us this time. So the kids, everybody stayed in, and so we just decided to like do things totally different. And it was cool because I told everyone like, okay, I'm going to teach this like I'm teaching kids church. So instead of bringing the kids into main service, we're going to bring everybody else into kids church. So that was fun because I got to use my children's pastor.
Family pastor's gifting.
So we had Legos, all Legos. And so we watched like a short story or a short video about the prodigal. But the cool thing is that I just put up posters. One said God, one said us. And I was like, okay, you guys are actually going to help me figure out what we learn about God and what we learn about ourselves in this story. And that was super cool to watch the congregation get involved. And so I was running back, writing things on the posters, and listening to them call out and recognize like, okay, if we're the sons in this story, there's two sons, and which son are we, and which way do we need to ask for forgiveness, or what's that look like, and what's our posture like? But then to hear them, adults and kids, calling out like, what do we learn about the Father in this story? And things like compassion, and he was watching, and he ran, and his arms were open. That was a super cool thing just to hear them like, okay, help me draw this out of the text. And yeah, from that story, that is, as we're learning about trusting this guide, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a father who, man, he's waiting. He's waiting at the window, watching for us. And the second we're turning back, he's like, come on.
Yeah, and also too in that story, in those parables, the thread of celebration and joy, right? The first parable of the lost sheep, the next one to follow that, the lost coin. And in each one of those, it ends with this. There is celebration in heaven. The angels are rejoicing with those who are repenting and coming back. And then really the fuller story in the lost son, and the son coming back to the father, and what that interaction with the father and the son. But the joy and the celebration, the feast that's prepared, and like the father even says, like, we're rejoicing of the return of our son, of my son. So that piece of was where I was pulling out even on Sunday of the celebration, the joy, the rejoicing that is taking place with being reconciled back into relationship with God, into right relationship. Where once we were far off, or we were lost, and we come back into relationship to God through Jesus, that there is rejoicing,
Yeah.
there is
Yeah.
celebration, and I don't want to
Right.
miss that, and move on to just I mean, God is a forgiving God. When that takes place, when we're in right relationship, there is such joy, such celebration, such rejoicing that takes place in heaven. Does it take place here
Right.
in my
Right.
heart and my soul? Does it take place around me? Are we overjoyed and filled with joy when those come back, or those say yes to Jesus and following him?
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about that in the context of like when I've forgiven people, or like it's easiest to think of with my kids, right? So they make the wrong choice. They're repentant and they apologize. And typically it's like, I mean, I'm glad, right? So we're like, yes, thank you. Thanks for recognizing that.
Yeah.
You're forgiven.
Yeah.
We'll move on. But I'm not usually like, let me make you the best meal you've ever had and buy you a new
Yeah.
coat and give you like that idea of that kind of celebration. We don't do, but there is like this, hey, you recognized and you made a different choice. You turned around, you know, whatever. Um, yeah. And that is what we see in Psalm 32, because
Mm-hmm.
all joy is all throughout that. So
Yeah.
like that thread, and I just think it's different, even in myself when I've had to repent or ask for forgiveness. I'm not usually like, yay, I had to do this, but that's how David talks about it. Like,
Right. There is such, yeah, celebration, joy, rejoicing.
yeah.
So this doesn't typically happen when I preach, but there was an image that came into my mind while I'm preaching, and I didn't already plan for it. But there is a picture that exists of me on top of Mount Adams. We were
Okay.
doing a hiking trip, backpacking trip, and at the beginning of this trip, we were asked to pick up a rock, and we were going to put it in our pack and then go up to we were hiking to the summit of Mount Adams, and we're to carry it with us, and then at the summit we would leave it there. And that rock represented just some weight or something we were carrying with us, something that was weighing us down, with the idea that we get to the summit, we lay it down, we put it, and at the summit at Mount Adams, there's a cross of rocks, or rocks that are in the shape of a cross.
Right.
It's up there already. It's been added to for, you know, generations,
Yeah.
probably, right? So we're selecting a rock, and people are picking up, like, in your hand it could fit, right? Or like
Smallish rocks because they know they have to carry it.
they got to put it in their pack, and this is like a few days hiking in, up and then up, and I pick up.
You were like, you said a must for a day.
I pick up an idiot, right? I'm 18. I pick up this dumb rock that's like this big.
Okay, 10 pounds.
Yeah, and in fact, it doesn't fit in my pack.
Should it carry it?
I had these small bags that you could like stuff different stuff in, and then when you pull out your pack, you're only pulling out this one bag, so you're having to unpack everything. I had to get everything out of that. I probably had, I don't know, like warm clothes or extra socks in that pouch. Pull everything out of that, put it in my bag, and then put the rock in this pouch, and then hang it on the outside of my bag. And I had an external frame, and so I hung it on the end piece that's up here. And then every time I'd like trip on a root, it smacked me in the side of the face.
You didn't feel like, I don't know. Actually, I can picture all of this.
This full on, like, I don't know what I was thinking, like penance. I've just got, yeah.
No, like, I'm young, I'm strong. I got
no, because it was like this represents like this something that you're carrying, or it's heavy, and yeah, it must have been something big. I don't know. I was just dumb. This thing smacking me all the way up the mountain as we're climbing up Mount Adams, and then you know, we get up there and we let it go, or we put it down in the cross up there. And on the way down, I was like, I'm so glad this thing's not smacking me in the face anymore. But I have a picture up on the top before I put it down, and it had hit me, it had gashed my face So I was bleeding and I didn't realize it till I'm up there. And I was like, what is going on? So then I just took this and I wiped it on the rock,
Mm,
the stone, this
mm.
boulder, while everyone's taking just
They're like,
river rocks. They're like, here you go. That's sweet.
it's a skipping rock.
And
Yeah.
I had put this on the rock and then laid it down, but I had a picture. It's the size of my head, and
Mm,
it's next to me,
mm,
with obviously the view of the range behind me. But like, yeah,
yeah.
that is what I had carried up there. And so as I'm preaching on Sunday, that's the visual that came to mind. Like there are things and times in which I personally am like carrying something with me
Mm,
that God's not asking me
mhm,
to, or I have attached it to myself that God's like, yeah, that's not a weight I've asked you to carry.
mhm.
I'm not asking you to work for this. I'm asking you to receive it.
Yeah.
Will you receive the forgiveness I'm offering through my son? I'm not asking you to climb up a mountain and
Right.
go through something hard carrying this weight. That's not what I'm inviting you
Right.
to. But as a 18-year-old, and as I'm preaching yesterday, that's the visual that came to
Mm,
mind. Like, no, I have wiped this away.
yeah.
It no longer exists. It's like we went back to the Joshua story as they cross the Jordan and go into the promised land. And before they go to the city of Jericho and march around it, and take victory there, it's like, no, I'm going to wipe away what you have. So you're not carrying into the
Mm,
promised land Egypt. You're not carrying in slavery. You're not carrying in all the baggage that you've brought in here. I'm going
right.
to wipe it away. And so part of that was the circumcision. You're going to carry this promise, this covenant with you,
Mm,
but in here you're gonna look different. You're gonna
mhm,
be mine
mhm,
in this space. I'm gonna roll away
mm,
what you have carried with you from Egypt. And that was the visual that came to mind even yesterday. It's like, yeah, I'm not asking you to carry it up. I'm asking you to do the hard work. I'm asking you to receive it.
yeah.
Let me roll it away.
All you have to do is set it down.
You set it down. Let me roll it
Yeah.
away, and it will be gone from his memory. It'll be
Right.
gone from existence. Yet there are still things I maybe hold on to that I
Mm,
shouldn't, or God's not asking me to, or even to be reminded of. And so that was the visual in
mm,
my head as I'm preaching that I didn't have to even prepare for, but
right.
that's even today of, yeah, as I look back and think, yeah,
Mm,
there was that moment, God, I took something on he didn't ask me to.
mhm.
It was heavier than it should have been.
Yeah.
And I learned a lesson and it's still with me.
And it's still, look, it's still paying off.
Just a few
Yeah.
years later.
A few years past 18.
Thank
Everybody, do you know that people can see? This isn't just audio. They can
you.
see you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for reminding
You're
me.
welcome. But in that vein, or similarly, because the illustration that we used for Psalm 32, especially in that verse 5, that talks about, so the New Living Version says, finally I confessed all my sins to you and stopped trying to hide my guilt. I said to myself, I will confess my rebellion to the Lord, and you forgave me. All my guilt is gone. So at the very start of service, before we started anything, I had all the kids come up and I had like a bucket of Legos, and I was like, pick a Lego out, just one Lego. Like, all right. So some of them are like picking a big thing and whatever. And I was like, great, now put it in your shoe. And they're like, what? I was like, take your foot out, because some of them were just trying to tuck it inside. Take your foot out, put it in your shoe, and put your shoe on. So then they're limping. And I was like, just leave it. We'll come back to it, but just keep it in your shoe today. So they're limping back. So all through worship, all through the whole thing, they've got this Lego in their shoe. And if you've stepped on a Lego, that's terrible, right? Well,
Spikes through the heel.
right. Well, so I don't know, like Harley's was like as big as his shoe. Kaysen picked a little tiny like lightsaber thing, so he lucked out. But then later on, as we were in Psalm 32, I was like, okay, kids, come back up here. And it's great because our kids are super dramatic. So they're literally like limping to the stage, dragging his leg with him practically. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was like, hey, is that very comfortable? No, absolutely not. And then Kaysen, and this is such a like, if you do a lot of illustrations, you know that sometimes they just don't work. And then sometimes they work better than you could imagine. Right. This was one of those. So thank you, Lord, for that. But I was like, okay, like how's it felt all morning? And some of them are like, it's awful. It hurts. Like, I can't even stand. Kaysen goes, I got used to it. And I was like, and in that moment, I even said out loud, I go, oh, God is talking to me right now through this kid, because the idea of that illustration, like what is the sin, the guilt, the thing that we're carrying around that is making us walk with a limp, right? God's like your rock. God's like, you could put it down anytime, you could put it down. Anytime you could take the Lego out of your shoe, and we're like trying to hold on to it. We think it's hidden in our shoe, whatever that idea. And so the illustration I was going with was like, hey, once you take this Lego out, it's like, like it feels so good, and God's forgiven. But Kaysen's comment of like, well, I got used to mine. I was like, there are things in my life. There's big sins that I'm walking with a limp. That's very obvious. Like, God, take this from me. I need forgiveness. But there are things that I'm like, kind of got used to that one. It's actually okay.
Yeah.
I've just tucked that one away.
Yeah.
And man, in real time in that moment, I was like, whoa, oh, this is not comfortable, especially not like right here, God. But yeah, I was like there. Sometimes those are harder because I'm like, it's not that uncomfortable. Like I'm pretty used to it. And then I was like, okay, guys, take it out of your shoe. I'm like, doesn't that feel better? And Noelle goes, it does feel better, but I can still feel it a little bit. And again, I was like, yes, I didn't plan for that, but man, sometimes you do, like it does leave a mark. And I was like, it leaves a mark for us, but God's like, you're good. I don't look at you that way anymore. I don't see you that way anymore. And that idea of even in the Psalm here of like, you forgave me and all my guilt is gone.
Yeah. And like new, and we get to live in that identity. New creation,
right? Which is
new identity, which
takes us to Second
Corinthians 5, where Paul is reminding us that this reconciled opportunity or act that Christ is inviting us into, we get to live as a new creation, new identity. And it's like with even like, it doesn't feel that, it doesn't hurt that bad. I got used to it, like deferred treatment. You got some issue going on, you're like, I'll be fine. I'll just I'll deal with it when it gets worse. Or if I have to deal with it long enough, then maybe I'll do something about it.
Well, and there's something too about like, if we're being really honest, there's something about like, okay, these are the big sins that again, I don't know, make me walk with a limp is the easiest way for me to like describe that. But the big ones that we're like, I know this is wrong. I know I need to root this out. Other people can see this in me, whatever. But those little things that like, I can get by. I think I'm doing pretty good. Maybe they're out of sight, out of mind, even for me, but certainly other people aren't seeing them. And I just like, in that moment, I was like, oh, those ones are actually harder.
Yeah. But, and God's the same.
God's like, I see it the same.
God's the same, same invitation, same, yes, I come to me, confess, and I will forgive you. Oh, wipe it clean. Because then it's a heart posture. When we come confessing, repentant, humble, Lord, forgive me of my sins. God is the same in his response and who he is. And I think that's what, and we'll get it. Well, I suppose we'll wrap into this, but like, that's where I'm landing. Like God is the same in his response, a forgiving God of who he is and his nature and character. And that's been my reminder is like, will you just receive? Like I've been asked you to work harder to get forgiveness. I just inviting you to receive. Like the son coming back to the father, like I don't deserve to be in your household. Just if I'm a slave here, at least I have some meals. I'm not eating with the pigs. And the father wraps his arms around, like God the Father wrapping his arms around us. Like come back into the fold, back into the family.
And I think like even in that, I imagine that son like, I've sinned. I've sinned against heaven and earth, I think is what he says. And he's like,
and you,
I don't deserve this. And I imagine the dad is like, just, I've got a party ready. I've been waiting. And that idea of like, and then not only that, but like you're back into your place, your position in this household, in this home. And I think that's 2 Corinthians 5 for me is that idea of like, the old life is gone. You have this new life. And in that, you get to be my ambassador. You get to partner with me in reconciliation. The things you've done, the sin you've committed, they don't disqualify you. Like, it's not like, okay, you're forgiven, but now you're a half, like you only get this much. God's like, welcome back. Here we are. Here's what we're doing.
Fully restored, fully reconciled.
And like I've got a party and there's work waiting for you.
And a testimony the work is like, can we live this reconciled life?
Well, the work of like, I guess, partnership, the work of like, hey, here I am. I've been
Yeah.
putting the world back together. Help me.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Your life testifies to the work
mhm,
I'm doing. So live that.
mhm, mhm.
Right. That's the sort of invitation for me, is be ambassadors where I'm in the spaces I'm going. I'm living a reconciled
Yeah.
life and calling attention to it.
Right.
I've been redeemed, reconciled, back in relation because of Christ Jesus.
Yeah.
And so my life, I want to testify. I want
Yeah.
my life to testify to that.
Yeah. Well, and it was at it's the end of 32, I think. Yeah. So 32:8, the Lord says, I will guide you along the best pathway for your life. I will advise you and watch over you. And that idea of like, when we seek forgiveness and understand this God who is like, yeah, making a way for redemption, then it's like, you, and I guess that's what I mean. There's not this like half like, okay, I forgive you, but you're over there. He's like, now I speak to you, I guide you, whatever. And that was this idea. We had built a tower out of Legos, and I had the kids come up and just like, okay, destroy this tower. And then I was like, now put it back together. And they were like, ugh. And I was like, here, that idea of God makes his kingdom. And then essentially we're like, your kingdom's great, but we're going to try to make our own, right? That's this beginning of our story. Unfortunately, we spend the rest of forever trying to make our own kingdom or figure out. And God's like, I'm building this back up. I am putting this world back together. Will you help me? And also, here's the booklet that tells you how to build this tower. Like, here's how you do it. And that idea of like, I'm called to reconcile, but like you're saying, this is not some like, I have to figure it out on my own. God's like, just show up and represent the way that I am in this world, the way that you've seen me. And he says, verse 10, unfailing love surrounds those who trust in the Lord. And that also struck me while I was preaching yesterday. It was like, unfailing love is not for those who haven't sinned. It's not for those who have like faultless records, or even like those who have already repented and actively like sought forgiveness. Like, unfailing love for those who trust the Lord. And I was like, man, I told them yesterday, I was like, even in this moment, God is showing me some things I need to work on. And so I can't stand here blameless, but I can stand here trusting God, which means unfailing love.
Yeah. And then the psalmist at the end of 32 ends it this way: rejoice in the Lord and be glad, you righteous, seeing all who are upright in heart.
Yeah.
And that's part of this. Like, this is what God does. He allows us to stand before him. It's the work of Christ that allows us even to be in the throne room of heaven and commune and be in the presence of God.
Yeah.
And that's the invitation it gives us. Like, we just how we're posturing ourselves, coming to closer to God, and God's running out there meeting us.
Right.
It's good. So good. So as we wrap this one up, what's the Kairos? What's God saying, and how is he inviting you to respond?
Yeah. So that's what I already shared, that idea of like, okay, where are the things that you've gotten used to? Where's the sin that you're like, yeah, I kind of got used to that. And then that ties into that, what I just said about trust. This idea, God's like, will you trust me with those things that you've gotten used to, and trust that my love does not fail? Yeah. So I'm taking some Legos into my shoes over here.
Yeah, the flat ones or the lightsabers. Yeah, I know it's in there, but
just push it to the side a little bit. It's fine.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think mine's also what I shared, but there's this, it's innate in me, like that servant's heart, just working to serve, but I've skewed it in ways where I thought that it was going to be needed for something God was going to offer. Working toward for forgiveness, working for God's love, right? I mean, it's can be human nature, but it's innate in me where it's like there is something to be done. I'm a doer, right? But also a servant's heart. So the idea of like, okay, I'm doing this for you, God.
He's like, I didn't ask you to.
And there's conviction there for me of like, it's not that I can't do that, but if my focus or my intention, if my heart posture is one to, I do this so I can receive or I can gain access, I was like, you've already got it.
Yeah.
And I want to give it so abundantly and so graciously, extravagantly. I want to throw a feast for you, not because you've done anything, but because you're mine.
Yeah, that resonates, because essentially what you're talking about is it's almost like he's like, you misunderstood who I am. You don't understand me. I don't actually work that way. And I was listening to a podcast on the way down about fasting, and the guy was talking about exactly that. And part of the benefit, I think is the word he used, but one of the benefits of fasting is that it helps us reorient and remind ourselves, like, what is the nature and character of God that I've mismanaged and decided I need to perform for, or whatever. Where God's like, you thought you had to come back and offer yourself as a servant in my household. I've got a party, a feast waiting for you.
Yes. So that's my kairos of living into that reality and truth of who God is. And who I am because of him.
Yeah.
So that's not I'm still learning.
It's probably an ongoing.
It's not a one-off. Like, I've arrived.
Yeah. But here's the beautiful thing: God's like waiting at the window for every time you get a little more understanding.
Yes. And that's a beautiful thing. Well, thanks for joining with us, guys. And we hope and pray and trust that you're having these conversations beyond Sunday and what you're hearing from God and putting it into practice. So have a great week.